people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
We will not bow down.
Let my people go.
Well, hello and welcome to episode 63 of the Croydon Constitutionalist podcast, bringing classical liberalism to South London and beyond via our YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Dan Heaton and my partner in podcasting today is Mike Swaddling, the co-founder of the Croydon Constitutionalist. Mike, how you doing?
Hello Dan, it's been an emotional ride the last week or so. I think a lot's been going on in the world and quite impactful stuff, but I would say as we sit here today, 15 so hours on from hearing about the drubbing the Tories got in North Shropshire, I'm feeling pretty happy with the world and content with democracy once again.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling a bit cheerier than you were perhaps last time. But you know, it's nearly Christmas, isn't it? So it's good that we've got some festive cheer. Well, I'm also delighted to be joined today by Hoong-Wai Cheah, the former UKIP Croydon chairman. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me back again. The less said about that former party, the better.
Not a problem here, mate, not a problem. So, Mike, what are we going to be talking about today?
What we will be talking about is the North Shropshire By-Election, as I've just mentioned. Plan B has now been implemented, the vaccine passport, and of course that incredibly large rebellion. Christmas restrictions and their impact, and of course hopefully we'll all be having a good Christmas nonetheless. And our predictions for 2022.
So, yes, Mike, you've already mentioned the North Shropshire by-election and the stunning result from, well, as we record, it's yesterday. So this by-election was caused by the resignation of Owen Patterson. He resigned after some sleaze allegations, shall we say. He had potentially been had another job which brought him into conflict with his duties as an MP, and perhaps failed to record those. He was going to get a 30-day suspension, but the Conservative Party essentially tried to get him out of that. It completely backfired, and eventually he decided to resign. So, of course, it's important to know that by-election was caused by that, and so it's against that backdrop that it takes place at all. Of course, there have been some shenanigans over the last few weeks in terms of apparent Christmas parties that were held last year whilst everybody else was locked up, and these were Conservative aides, and indeed, of course, most recently we've discovered that Sean Bailey, who was the Conservative mayoral candidate for the GLA mayor, the Greater London mayor, him and his activists had a get together. It seems, but yeah, the result was quite stunning. It's the biggest turnaround since Christchurch in 1993. Lib Dems winning with 47.2% of the vote, up a massive 37.2%, and the Tories down from down to 31%, from almost double that. Mike, you seem a bit pleased with it, but what have you made of it all?
I think I sensed a real change in the mood of the nation when Partygate came out with that video and the press conference and them laughing at us. And I say a mood of the nation, it's very anecdotal. WhatsApp groups, Facebooks of friends and cousins, people who aren't political. So I'm used to seeing the political stuff go around my friends, people like yourselves. But I saw it from my friends and family who are not political, suddenly were having a go at Boris. Most of whom, just based on our ages and where we live, most of them probably voted Conservative. I don't necessarily know. And they were having a go at Boris. You felt something changed. But of course, North Shropshire was such a big Tory stronghold. The great fear was that they would, receive a really, really huge surge against them, but still just hang on. And then that's the narrative. The narrative, if they've still won, the narrative is that Boris was right and last year is inside Westminster talk, but it wasn't inside Westminster talk. These people imposed laws on us that meant people couldn't visit their dying relatives, families were kept apart, people's livelihoods were taken from them, huge amounts of depression, all these other things I'm not necessarily going to go into all straight away. But they just they ignored those rules themselves, because obviously they weren't worried. They didn't think it was real, they didn't think it was necessary. But then they just mocked us for doing it. And it's cut through. And I am obviously not necessarily delighted the Lib Dems won. Although they are the only party that stood up against vaccine passports in Parliament. So good for them for that. They have noticed the word liberals in their title. They still haven't found the word democracy. But I am delighted the Tories got a less of a bloody nose, more of a severed limb from it.
Indeed. Well, I mean, perhaps going to talk about the Lib Dems. I mean, a stunning result for them. They've now got almost a 6,000 majority. But I'm not sure that it's the be all and end all for them. And obviously, it's off the back of from their perspective, the Chelsham and Amersham by-election results. So they think they've done very well over recent by-elections. Of course, it may just be that they are the go-to party for a revolt against the government, at least in many parts of the country. Because in fact, Labour was second place in this constituency in 2019. So it does seem that there was quite a bit of tactical voting, as well as the unease with the Conservative Party and with the government for the reasons that you've so eloquently described, Michael. Hoong-Wai, what have you made of this?
Oh, I've got mixed feelings about this. To be honest, to be frank, and a lot of thoughts, obviously. I actually thought I wouldn't predict. I hate, I'm averse to making predictions in politics. I actually thought that, as you said, Mike, that the Tories would hang on. They would lose their big majority, and they would just scrape through. So I was not expecting the Lib Dems to win by such a wide margin. But I am, as you say, Mike, quite pleased that they got a drubbing. What I'm not so pleased about, though, is how that came about and why. It's very clear that, to me at least, I don't know what you guys think, it's very clear to me that what's happened is that people have voted against what they didn't want rather than in favour of what they do want. They've decided that the Lib Dems are more palatable than the Tories or Labour at the moment. Now, the reason I say this is if they actually voted for what they want, we'd see an uptick in the likes of Reform, Greens, or any of the smaller parties who actually stand behind what they believe in. Now, I've always said that the top three parties don't actually believe in anything. They'll say whatever it takes if they think it will help them win votes. So I'm a bit disappointed, but this is quite a British political thing, isn't it? You tend to vote to keep the person that you vote for the lesser evil, the one that the evil that you think is most palatable and has the most chances of getting in, which doesn't give me a lot of hope, to be honest. I also did want to say something about Owen Patterson and his resignation on that thing. Should I go into that?
Please do.
Yeah. I was looking into it and I was trying to find out what exactly he did wrong, and it seems to me like, I mean, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I'm not sure what he did wrong exactly. That's not just a technical fault. Now, he's an advocate for Randox, paid by Randox. Okay, sounds a bit dodgy. But had he simply just gone to Lord Bethel, who was in charge of the contracts at the time, and Lord Bethel took on Randox as a proposal amongst many other proposals, I think that would have been okay, morally speaking. So I wonder how much of it was on Lord Bethel not doing a proper due diligence and have a proper competition amongst contract bidders that landed him in this situation. So I mean, my grandfather always said, politics is a dirty game, and even if you didn't do anything wrong, you can really suffer the fallout of someone else's actions.
It's interesting you say that, and there has always been overshadowing this by-election the sense of mismanagement from the Conservative Party that it ever happened in the first place. If you just make your service 30 days, I won't pretend to be that on top of some of the facts, but if, as you say, if they just got multiple bidders, there's various opportunities you have to stop getting to the point where they get this by-election result. And that is basic management, and that is basic management is a skill that our Prime Minister, but not just the Prime Minister in this scenario, but actually the entire inner circle seems to completely fail to have. How quickly they've lost their core vote that they gained, as evidenced by this, how they've let this by-election come apart, how perhaps they weren't good enough in their contract management in the first place. Now, many people listening to this, and certainly I've had experience of getting contracts in the past. You often know who you want to deal with. You have a preferred supplier, and you still get 3 quotes. You can't always get 3 quotes. Then you evidence that you couldn't get the other quotes that you needed. You run something up that shows some sort of due diligence that you've done. If something's not been followed, rules have not been followed, and I can think of many areas where perhaps we haven't always followed the rules. We get audited. You take it. The audit rules might be nonsense, just not really possible. No bad outcomes happened. You take it on the chin because you were meant to follow the rules, and all those opportunities the Tories had to do that and stop the outcome yesterday, as we record, they failed, and that's a fish that is rotting from the head, I fear.
Yeah, well, they tried to change the rules afterwards, and that's what's really caused that's actually caused them more problems than whatever was the original problem with whatever Owen Patterson did or did not do, and that's caused them problems. Yes, it's caused this by-election to take place because it was overwhelming, calls for Owen Patterson to, basically his head had to roll effectively, even though he played a part in it, obviously. But it's also got the backs up of the backbenchers, who felt that they were being asked to vote for something that was ridiculous and that would have made them look sleazy as well. So that's one strike against Boris and his apparatchiks in terms of what's happening with the backbenchers, and we'll go on to talk about how they're not so happy with Boris even before yesterday's by-election result. But obviously this will not help him out in that respect. Worth, I think, mentioning the smaller parties that Hoong-Wai mentioned just before. So let's mention the small parties. Labour, they came in third. They got absolutely smashed. Albeit, I suspect some Labour voters certainly did vote for the Lib Dems. It seemed that they were the selected anti-Tory vote certainly amongst the left wing. Albeit, I think the Green Party came fourth. Of the parties that we've talked about quite a bit on the podcast, Reform came fifth with 3.75% of the vote. I know they've certainly mentioned it that the candidate that they felt was a good local candidate. She came down with COVID about a week ago, and so did all of her main activists. So they basically had to stop campaigning about a week ago. So maybe they'll feel that if that hadn't happened, they would have managed to hold their deposit by getting the 5%. But who knows? UKIP came sixth with 0.99%, and Reclaim came seventh with 0.98%. Reclaim having the deputy leader Martin Daubney as the candidate there. So a bit of a name, but didn't seem to get any cut through. And last but not least, the Heritage Party came in 11th with 0.21% of the vote. So, I mean, really, obviously, Reform did come fifth, and we've discussed that. But interesting that in a constituency which was very much a Leave voting constituency and a very traditional Conservative right of centre constituency, nonetheless, the give the government a kicking vote on this occasion went to one of the more traditional, better known parties, in this case the Lib Dems, and no real breakthrough for any of the parties that would present themselves as being to the right of centre. I don't know if anybody has any views on that.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I want to say. Well, I think we will see. I don't know if we've got the numbers yet for this, but there will be some polling, no doubt, come out of who you voted for last time and who you're voting for this time, or you voted for this time. I think we will see that the Conservative vote largely stayed at home, and some went to Reform, and that was. And then obviously the Labour vote's gone to Lib Dems. I'm not sure many Tories have gone to the Lib Dems, maybe some have. But really, what we've seen is the Reform and Reclaim and Heritage and UKIP haven't really made the case for disaffected Tories yet. That's, I think, the real problem there. I suspect a lack of ground activity, a lack of grassroots activity will be a factor in that. These parties don't really exist at a local level, with the exception of UKIP. Up and down most of the country, but so the Conservatives have stayed at home. I doubt they've gone to the Lib Dems. Obviously, as you say, it does appear that Labour voters have gone to Lib Dems. I guess that wouldn't be repeated, although it's a worrying trend for the Conservatives if it does start to happen. The other thing I just quickly want to say, and I'm sure Owen's got a few things to say as well, is that I did laugh at the Rejoin EU at 58 votes. Showing once again they've got the Remainers have got their pulse on the views of Britain.
Indeed, yeah, no breakthrough for them on this occasion at least. Yeah, it's been interesting because the Lib Dems in Cheltenham and Amersham and Cheltenham, they claim they seem to do well on a particularly local issue at that point, which was opposition to HS2. So. Something which I know is not very popular amongst conservative-minded people in that area, and indeed many Conservative MPs. And of course, Boris has been concentrating, or is perceived to be concentrating, on the red wall. And it seems that the Lib Dems, after these two by-election results, are certainly suggesting that they're looking to make inroads now into the blue wall of previously reasonably safe Conservative seats in the south of England, because they feel the Conservatives are a tax raising party that wants to spend lots of money on changing things to do with the environment. I mean, they sound exactly like Lib Dems to me, but they're just wearing a different rosette. So whether people are, who are going to be pretty hacked off with the sort of things that, many of the things the Conservatives actually are doing, rather than just some sleaze or on attending, a bit of do as I say, not as I do type thing, which is, extremely egregious, but nonetheless it's not actually a policy. Certainly the Lib Dems are going to say, well, I don't know, we'd do exactly the same, but we'd do it better. I don't know if that's going to be their policy. Hoong-Wai, what have you made of it?
It's really funny that you say that, actually. I had a friend of mine, I won't name him because he would rather not be named, of course. He pointed out that the Lib Dems are to the right of the Conservative Party at the moment, and have been for a while, actually. And if you think about it, that's probably true, apart from the matter of Brexit. I think that's quite right. Well, what I feel is that with this North Shropshire result, I think the voters are sending a signal. I find that voters like to send signals to political parties. What this means to me is that if there was to be another general election, I don't think the Lib Dems would gain as much ground as they are shouting about now. I think they're probably being a bit overconfident, overjubilant. I mean, let them have their day. They did have success today, even if it is through other people's mistakes. But hey, this is politics. But I'm just looking at the numbers now, and I think Helen Morgan, who got just shy of 18,000 votes, that's the winning candidate this time. Whereas at the last election in 2019, Owen Patterson got over 35,000 votes. So I think you're right there, Mike, that a lot of people they're just tired, and they're tired of the Conservatives, and they've decided not to vote. But that dramatic fall for Labour from 12,500 down to just over 3,500. That is stupendous. I don't know what that says about the Labour Party. I don't think it says very much about the Lib Dems, to be honest. I think Lib Dems are just the default protest vote at the moment, much as a proper party used to be some years ago.
Just one thing on that last point, if you like, in a way. Reform UK are clearly the lead, or what I'm going to call son or daughter of UKIP vote. The post, the purple vote, the people on the right. I think it was Matthew Goodwin book Revolt on the Right. The people that were spoke about in that book, Reform UK are that party. UKIP, a third of their vote, something like that, maybe a quarter, roughly speaking. Reclaim, Martin's a high-profile figure. Reclaim had put a lot of effort into this by-election. Again, less than 1,000 votes less than them. And Heritage, and we've obviously done some work with David. 79 votes is not a great number, and I think that comes on the back of Old Bexley and Sidcup being a similar sort of level. There's clearly reform of the party out front in that. I just hope between those parties they find a way to work together and particularly reform, whack up a gear on building up a local base and local structures that are needed to campaign.
I don't think that's going to work personally. We as a nation are too risk averse. We don't want to risk knocking off the devil to have the devil you hate come into power. So it pains me to say this because I believe in democracy, in freedom, in individual liberty and responsibility. Those things that the left hate so much. But even if they all put their votes together, they might beat the Greens. Based on this, the outcomes of this election, I think gone are the days of putting pressure on the Conservatives. The public has toyed with it, and they're not happy with the results. So I don't think that's going to happen. Maybe this is something that you and I just disagree on.
Well, you talked there about the potential or otherwise of a party putting pressure on the Conservatives, and obviously historically UKIP did that, and we got a referendum and we won. So it clearly in that instance there was some political pressure using the democratic process as it were, and that bore fruit ultimately to a great extent. Move on to the next subject, which is Plan B. And the dreaded Plan B, Plan Boris, shall we call it? Because I'm calling it that now. The Plan B that was never supposed to be brought in. Masks for cinemas and theatres and.
Sorry, Dan. I have to stop you there. The lockdown, the coming out lockdown, that was irreversible.
It was irreversible. That is correct. Yes, Plan B was. I don't know when it was supposed to be used, but apparently it is now. Now it is now in. Masks for cinemas and theatres, COVID passports for nightclubs, and I think indoor venues with over 500 people, and crucially for Mike, outdoor venues with 10,000 people or more. So basically all Premiership football games and many in the one or two divisions below that as well. But don't worry, because the booster programme has gone into overdrive, and once everybody's had their 12th vaccine, we'll be okay. That seems to be the plan. Nonetheless, these new restrictions were put to the House of Commons, and the Labour Party, the official opposition, stood absolutely behind their principles and voted to make people show their papers and to restrict their freedom, as is the want. However, whilst there was not much in the way of official opposition, there was quite a bit of opposition from the backbenchers of the Conservative Party, with 100 backbenchers voting against these regulations. And that was before the North Shropshire by-election result. So these people were against these regulations, probably as a matter of principle. Some of them, of course, may not be happy with Boris for other reasons in terms of what happened with with Owen Patterson. Mike, how did you enjoy the rebellion?
I think it was great that we saw so many Conservative backbenchers. I don't know why anyone would vote for vaccine passports. I mean, the issues at hand here are really significant. Masks, I think, are a control factor. We had going back to, we have been told this is reversible. We are talking about a variant that all the indications are is not very severe, and let's hope and frankly pray it stays that way. There is no overriding reason for them to bring it in. There's no evidence, no numbers they can point to. There are projections, but we know how woeful the projections have been. And you can argue about masks. I mean, I'm not a fan of the muzzle, but whatever. At the end of the day, I don't want to overplay how big an impact that is. But vaccine passports are massive. The idea of creating a two-tier society, bringing health passports, saying your freedom is at the whim of the government, is really significant. And we've seen this already. A week ago, as we speak, a vaccine passport was valid with 2 injections. This week, a few days later, after all the things that happened, after the complete disasters happened to the Conservatives, it was valid after 3 injections. And that, now, as you say, it's a future date, but as they were crashing, they've already upped the ante. I'm reminded of the scene in Cloud City where Darth Vader turns to Lando Calrissian and say, "Pray I don't change the terms further," or something to that effect. That's what we've got with this government at the moment. That's really significant. Dan, you mentioned going to football. I don't intend to show my papers to go to an event in this country. That may well mean after 30 years I stop going to Palace. But I do not intend to show my papers to go to an event. Well done, Carlisle, for changing their capacity to 9,999 to avoid this. There's always a way around government. But yeah, it's the rebellion. Well done for those that did. What an inept opposition we have.
Indeed. Oh wait, how did you enjoy the parliamentary proceedings?
To be honest, I got so sick of all this talk about the vaccines, about the pandemic. I just switched off altogether and only I've heard about Plan B and I've heard about something to do with vaccine passports, and I just decided for myself, you know what, I don't think I'm going to follow these rules. Now, to be fair, in my case, I'm a family man and an introvert. I'm not going to be going to nightclubs. I don't particularly enjoy football, so it's not going to affect me all that much unless I want to travel abroad. But that's another story. The thing is, none of these restrictions make sense. Yes, okay, we know we have Chris Whitty. He's a scientific man, but he's not balanced. Science is about having balance, having your ideas challenged by other people, having new evidence to counter existing presuppositions. That's not happening. Chris Whitty is behaving not just like a bureaucrat, but an authoritarian politician. He's playing politics. He's not saying, okay, here's the advantages of Plan B, here's the advantages of Plan A. Sorry, I should have gone the other way around. Advantages and disadvantages of Plan A, pros and cons of Plan B, and then leave it up to the politicians and the public to decide, or maybe even a select committee to decide. That's not happening. The politicians are being cowardly, self-serving populists, and they're offloading this responsibility to do the right thing and leaving it to a civil servant to call the shots for them. That's not democracy. That is not democracy at all. That is, I don't know, I can't even compare China to this. And it's not meritocracy either, because there's no challenge, there's no balance. The whole point of oppositional democracy is that one side pulls one way, the other side counterbalances it with weight to pull the other side, and hopefully the sensible ones wavering in middle will shift the balance. But that's not happening at all, and I'm just sick of it, and I'm not going to follow the rules. These what does it mean to be fully vaccinated? First it was 2 jabs, now it's going to be 3 jabs. It's going to carry on. Pretty sure of it. Besides, these projections that they use to scare us with, they're all worst case scenarios. They're not to bring in an unrelated subject, but it is like climate change. They show you the worst case scenarios, and you're supposed to do everything you can, completely upturn economy and people's lives, people's livelihoods, just in case the worst case scenario happens. What about the realistic scenario? What about the best case scenario? What about the projection for, if we do this, we think this will happen. If we do that, we think that will happen. There should be multiple scenarios. That's not happening. It's authoritarian right now, behavioral science, where they're trying to influence our behavior rather than presenting us with the results. They're treating us like idiots. Sure, not all of us are scientists, but many of us, and enough of us are. Certainly, I know many of my former colleagues in politics are very well versed in the science. I am pretty well versed in the science as well. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on everything, but I can challenge the statistics if they were made available. Even the few statistics that we see right now can be challenged, and it doesn't give Chris Whitty and his cohort a lot of give me a lot of confidence in them, basically.
One of the statistics that was put up the other night, and you don't have to be a maths genius to see the flaw in this, was it was doubling every day. The number of cases were doubling every day. Everyone in the world will have the new variant coronavirus of COVID by New Year's Eve, 7 times, based on their projection. Now, I'm no expert on these things, but I don't think you need to be an expert to know that that's not true, and that's not likely. Exponential growth does not stay exponential with viruses. Any epidemiologist will tell you that. It also doesn't go to a point of everyone in the world getting it 7 times. But you're right, this kind of, they throw out these worst cases that clearly just look foolish, but of course the challenge from the opposition is you need to go further and faster. The challenge from the media is you need to go further and faster. Very worrying time for us with that. But you mentioned not following the rules. I think there's a nation that's not particularly likely to follow the rules now. People are getting their jabs. People are wearing the masks. No doubt about that. But today I've seen the first polling I've seen from YouGov that people who don't want another lockdown. That's the first time I've seen that. I think there's just a sense, a smell in the air, or whatever you want to call it, of people saying, well, you can do what you want, but I'll be doing what I want as well.
Yeah, I saw that poll as well, and it's good news at last. I think people have decided enough is enough. This is, getting crazy. And ultimately, people over a certain age or with particular conditions would get used to the idea of having a jab every autumn in the same way that maybe they have a flu jab. I think they would get used to that. And, we're talking about jabs, that's fine. There is no way that healthy young people, and let's not even get onto the subject of injecting children who are not going to be harmed at all by this particular condition whatsoever. But your average person under 50 or whatever age you want to pick is at no real risk from this and should not be having to have 3rd boosters, 4th boosters or what have you. And I think, the support for extra measures does seem to be dwindling away. So that poll was, some good news. Well, with this rebellion, people not very happy with the way Boris dealt with the Owen Patterson situation, not overly happy about the COVID passports, and I'm sure there's a lot of rumblings about the whole net zero strategy. Now after this smashing that they've got at the polls in North Shropshire, there's been a slump in the polls. Mike, do you think there'll be a leadership election or a leadership challenge anytime soon?
A leadership challenge anytime soon. Not yet, no. I've been trying to think through when I think something will happen and how I think something will happen. And increasingly, I think Boris is a dead man walking. He's politically damaged. People are laughing at him. They're not laughing with him anymore. The thing that will that's really changing is so he's got to go. He's political. He used to be political dynamite. He's now dynamite for the Tory party. If I were a Tory activist running in May, I will be very, very worried. But that's in May, and I think that's the answer. If I was a betting man, end of May, Boris goes. Hang what will no doubt be appalling local election results around his neck, and get someone new to build fresh. So there's my little expectation.
I'm going to disagree with you again, Mike. I'm really sorry. I don't think they're going to get rid of Boris.
We're not a university here. We can disagree.
Single thought, no opposing thoughts allowed. Well, I think the reason I think Boris isn't going to go is that they don't have anyone lined up to replace him. When they were getting rid of Theresa May, everybody knew Boris was going to get in. The other contenders came, they put up a good fight, but we all knew Boris was going to get in. And Boris would have got in after Cameron actually had Michael Gove not stabbed him in the back. So until they've lined up a replacement, that's not going to happen. They're not going to have a motion of no confidence. I think we're stuck with him for a while. Now, the thing about Boris is he's clearly very smart, though he likes to play the buffoon. But he is still self-serving. He clearly has his got his media background behind him, having been a journalist and all that. He's very good with words, if he has to be, and he knows how to string a story together. But I think you and I, the three of us, are against everything the BBC stands for these days. But unfortunately, the BBC still does drive the public narrative, and what Boris is doing, all he's doing is I'm faulting him at the same time as not saying that he's driving this. I'm saying Boris is just following the BBC narrative in putting on more restrictions, having net zero, for example. He has no ideology or guiding principle for himself. It's just self-serving, and he wants to win. Of course, that's what politicians tend to do. So I don't think, as long as he keeps towing the BBC line, he's not going to go anywhere, I'm afraid.
Fair enough. Well, we're going to talk about predictions later. But what do we think is going to happen at Christmas?
Well, we're a week out from Christmas, as we sit here, just about. I think I will be executing my Christmas plans, frankly, regardless. I think that's true of a lot of people. There is quite a real risk that I might not, because I am genuinely sick. I've got a cold, and I'm seeing lots of people getting colds at the moment, quite severe colds. I suspect they are the Omicron variant of COVID. By quite severe colds, they're more bad than usual. To be clear, no one has come back to me and said that they're actually properly ill or need to go to hospital, thankfully, or anything like that. But it's a cold. It's not a good cold. And obviously, if I get that, I might not execute my Christmas plans. But I think I can't almost believe I'm saying that, but even these idiots can't be so foolish as to try and impose something before Christmas.
They did it last time. I'm not going to make any predictions for it, but generally I take the attitude of hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I'm preparing for the worst, in that they're going to try and lock down everything and destroy Christmas again. Needless to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to say what I will do. I'm not going to incriminate myself in case it ever does become illegal. but I'm not going to follow the rules. I'm going to carry on my Christmas plans regardless.
Yes, I think I have heard rumours of a, what they call it, a circuit breaker lockdown early in the new year. But yes, I think they would be very, very foolish to try to cancel Christmas after all that's gone on recently.
There was something I was going to say with it. We've lost a lot losing the Christmas run-up, Christmas parties and the like. Christmas Day itself is probably less of a thing for me. Most of my adult life, I've been running people around houses or trying to find somewhere have a Christmas dinner, with nieces or nephews or whatever it might be. I don't know why I said with nephews because I don't have nephews. You know what I mean. Taxi service has generally been my Christmas day, but fine, that's fine. But the run up to Christmas is my Christmas. It's where I get together with friends. I go out with work colleagues. You bring a sense of enlightenment of yourselves coming together, and I think it is quite a spiritual thing. And I'm not just talking about the whiskey and the rum. It's not a Christian thing in that sense. In that it's not spiritual in the absolute strict religious sense, but there is a spiritual aspect of us coming together and being together. And indeed, the festival of Christmas clearly still has a Christian element to it. It is a time that lots of people I know who aren't religious will go to church, will go to mass, will go to carol services, will sing praise the Lord. I think it's incredibly important that people see something more than just their life, without necessarily being religious. It's really important that you have more than just what your views are in life. You see some higher guiding influence or power, whatever it might be. And for the second year running, we have lost that to a very significant degree. I think that's very worrying, and without wanting to sound too conspiratorial about it, I do find it interesting that it's Christmas that again being attacked, again an absolute core part of our culture being attacked for this virus, and it only once again highlights that the Conservatives don't conserve.
That's very interesting, Mike. Talking about this closing down Christmas and it being an attack on Christmas. If you were religious like me, you might even say that this is the devil attacking us, attacking Christmas. But as I said, although I am a churchgoer, I have been a churchgoer voluntarily for over 15, 16 years now. Actually, probably coming to 17 years. Never mind my age. But what I'm going to make a comment on the spiritual aspect of it, but not from a Christian religious sense. A long time ago, basically back when I was still young, single, and not very established in myself, not very confident, Christmas was the most depressing time of the year. It is, if you don't have friends and family around you, it is extremely lonely. It is the gloomiest part of the year when things are starting to get cold. Things are still wet, but not cold enough to be snowy and festive. When you take away the festivities that give you that warmth, the things that make this time of the year palatable, enjoyable, indeed even uplifts the spirit. I'll come out with a confession now. For a number of years, at least 5 years, back in my late teens, early 20s, the Christmas period was when I was the most likely to contemplate suicide. I haven't done it, obviously, I'm still here. But how many others are going to feel that again, especially if they're cut off from friends and family? It's not something I'd like to entertain. That's just the spiritual aspect of it. Of course, there's also the economic side of it. never mind closing down general businesses. Some businesses, for example, I saw a pub recently. The owner of a pub he explained how in the new year is generally a dead time because people make more resolutions, go to the pub less, spend less. They save up more because they spend more during Christmas, and Christmas is when they build up that buffer to tide them over the next 3 months. I've heard of many cancellations, and a lot of pubs and restaurants are dead. Maybe not in the cities where the politicians frequent. Oh yeah, those probably still going to be busy, but in the more rural areas and the smaller towns, it might be a lot of businesses might have to close down and they lose their livelihoods, and town centres lose their centre of community. That has further impacts not just on the economy, but again on people's spiritual well-being, more religious aspects aside.
No, certainly it's very concerning from an economic perspective, as you say, the Hoong-Wai, in terms of the hospitality trade, certainly going to be hit. They've been hit in the last couple of weeks just by the suggestion that people should go back to working from home. A number of Christmas parties and even just Christmas lunches that have been cancelled from this week and the coming week has been terrible for businesses that have suffered quite a lot over the last 2 years. So it's going to be a bad time for those businesses, and as you say, for anybody who's alone and is not that keen on their own company, it can certainly be a bad time of year.
I was incredibly poignant what you said there, and thank you almost for saying it, because it is a. I happen to be working from home now. I put my decorations up on the 1st of December, something I would never contemplate normally doing. I'd leave it, I'd leave it till whenever. But because I wasn't going out, I wasn't seeing decorations, and it was dark and cold and all that kind of thing. But you can imagine for millions of people in this country, it's not that. They haven't got that easy fix for it being a bit mopey, and maybe a lot more. So very very sound point.
Well, that's enough about Christmas 2021, perhaps. We can probably say just about. I think that 2021 was better than 2020 as a year. I think just about, as we say. But yes, 2022 is around the corner, and we're going to be making some predictions, which no doubt people will listen back to in 12 months' time and ridicule us for getting everything wrong. But first up, it's you, Mike. What are your predictions for 2022?
Well, I think firstly, I'll pick something local. We've got our first mayoral election in Croydon in May, and I predict we will see a Labour mayor and a Labour council. I think we had a shout at a Conservative mayor, less of a shout at a Conservative council, maybe a hung council. But that's gone. That's gone now. No chance of that. A Labour mayor and a Labour council. Now you might question, was it all worth it? Or I think we'd get rid of the current administration. And the two front runners, as we've spoke about previously on this podcast, for the Labour mayoral, in fact, not front runners, they're only two runners now for the Labour mayoral candidacy, are much more competent people than the shower we've had running the council the last few years. And that's a positive step for the borough, and I think we will see a better, not necessarily great, but better set of governance in Croydon. I mean, my other prediction for the end of the year is the US midterms. A bad time for Brandon. Joe Biden will lose significantly in the midterms. I mean, all presidents do, actually. But I think a mixture of the Republicans done quite well in the state races when Trump lost his seat, lost the presidency. The Republicans still done quite well. The previous cycle had been looking at redistricting in a lot of areas, so the districting will be better for the Republicans, both Senate and House. No, the Senate will be the same, sorry, because they're states. But the House districting will be better still. And the cost of living crisis in America, the inflationary crisis, is really significant. And I think that's really starting to bite people. And that is going to reverberate on Joe Biden as well. And I might sneak one extra prediction in around that. I think the back end of this year is the point that the mainstream media start to break the story that we've seen all along, but break the story that Joe Biden's health means he's no longer up to being president. And unfortunately, the popularity of Kamala Harris means they haven't really got anywhere else to go.
Well, bold predictions there. Hoong-Wai, what have you got for us?
I'm going to make some predictions about the vaccinations. As I said earlier, I'm generally averse to predictions, but hey, at least I know a little bit about science. You know, not many people are aware that the regular flu, not many people are actually aware that flu can be really quite bad. But the regular flu is caused by a type of coronavirus. Not many people are aware of that. A lot of people have only first heard about a coronavirus due to the COVID pandemic. And we've been having year on year requiring people to have different flu jabs. Well, not requiring. Okay, every year if you want to be immunized against the flu, the previous year doesn't work. You need to take another jab. So my prediction is that's going to keep happening. The coronavirus is going to keep evolving. Coronavirus vaccines are not as effective as first or second generation vaccines. So I think we're going to go up to at least a sixth jab. Probably not the exact same vaccine. They might say, "Oh, we've got a second generation of type of vaccine now that's good against the Omicron Zeta variant or whatever." But I think it's likely to go up to 6 jabs before they realize that, you know what, we're going to have to deal with this every year on year, and treat it like the flu. Which leads on to my second prediction, is that I think these pandemic measures are going to carry on to at least the third quarter of the next year. I hope I'm wrong in a good way, but it's going to go on to at least third quarter. That would make it September. Yeah. So September next year, just in time for Christmas. If it lasts till the end of September, it'll probably keep going on to Christmas, but I suspect it won't end till at least August.
Well, for my predictions, I'm going to play it safe and say that Croydon council tax is definitely going to go up again this year. After the council went bust, I think they're going to need some money. And obviously, we've mentioned, Mike, about the mayoral candidate. This decision will be made before the mayoralty is decided, nonetheless. But I think taxes are going to go up in Croydon for the reason that they need to pay back their debts. But sadly, something else that I think is going to go up as well for everybody, pretty much throughout the country, is inflation. We've seen inflation going up recently, and indeed the interest rates have now gone up. I mean, they're still very, 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 very low, but I can see inflation continuing to rise over the next year, and frankly, the longer that the coronavirus measures are in place, the more government spending there is, the worse this is going to be at the end of it. So hopefully we won't go into the third quarter of next year, because I think if we do go into the third quarter of next year, then it'll carry on even after that, because somebody somewhere will want to put a mask on you over the winter months, because you get a sniffle or something like that.
Oh dear.
So Mike, what have we got on our website at the moment?
So one article since we last spoke, and that is looking at the revised shadow cabinet under Keir Starmer. So put together an article, Shadow Cabinet Best Lifted in the Shadows. We looked at the Shadow Cabinet when it was first pulled together by Keir in April last year, and his revisions following the Hartlepool by-election, and his revisions just recently. It's not looking good. I'll quote one part from the article saying, not honouring the original vote, McFadden, one of the new members of the Shadow Cabinet, was in favour of a second referendum to give the people a final say on leaving the European Union. And of course, a note to Pat, we'd already had a final say, and that was in 2016. They basically produced a bunch of Remainers. They couldn't find one person who believed in Brexit. They couldn't seem to even find one person that was ready to accept that, even though they might have voted Remain, they lost and they'd accept the democratic vote. So, as much as we spent this podcast having a go at the government, having a go at the Conservatives, it should be remembered, Labour really are dreadful.
They are.
And Mike, we had a very successful event just recently.
We did indeed. Thank you ever so much, for, and we know some of you listened, for all of those that turned up on Wednesday to our third Wednesday, no passports required event. Still could just about say it's a no passports required event. At the George in Croydon. Really good. Part of the third Wednesday Libertarian Drinks that Dick Denning-Pole, friend of the podcast, has been been setting up, and they run up and down the country. Really good chat. Really good to see so many familiar and new faces at it. Please come along and support us each month as we do that. If you fancy it, chat to people who possibly share your views on some of the world events. Our next ones will also be at the George, Wednesday the 19th of January. That's the third Wednesday in January. 7 p.m. at the George in Croydon. Come along if you can.
Yes, it really was a great evening, and so good to see so many new faces. Well, if you'd like to write for our website or have any stories you would like to cover, please do contact us. You can do so via the Twitter at CroydonConst, via our Facebook page, via our website, croydonconstitutionalists.uk, or via email, croydonconstitutionalists@gmail.com. Well, do please subscribe to the podcast and the pubcast and our YouTube channel. Do please like, share and leave a review. It's always good to get feedback, and it helps others to find the podcast. Well, thank you very much, Hoong-Wai, for joining us for the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you back.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me back.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, a very Merry Christmas. And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
And from me, bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.